everybody, and welcome to Sustainability Oh So White. I'll be the moderator for today's panel. And to introduce myself, I am the co-founder and director of operations at Yard and Parish, the UK's first sustainable luxury retailer and discovery platform for independent Black-owned businesses. What I do at Yard and Parish is I work with a community of over 40 local brands, and each of them are dedicated to elevating the shopping experience for the socially conscious and eco-conscious consumer as well. And at the core of what we do is to provide a support system for young Black business owners. We bring fresh perspectives to the retail industry. And we act as a vessel for amplifying positive stories of the African diaspora and stories of African and Caribbean heritage. So also at Yard and Parish, sustainability is the new luxury for us. So it's very important that we let go of the traditional definitions of what luxury means by advocating for conscious consumption, which really comes down to practices like reducing waste, supporting local businesses, of course, and prioritizing our health and our well-being in the most natural ways possible. So today's session is bringing a lot of topics that I'm personally passionate about, and I've put together a wonderful panel. We're going to have a very juicy, intimate, important conversation surrounding diversity and sustainability. We're not holding back today, so get ready, and I really hope you guys enjoy being part of this conversation. I will introduce our speakers in a moment, and I think I'll start by bringing in two of the ladies. Our first speaker is Charlotte Williams, who's the founder of 76 Agency. Are you here, Charlotte?
I am. Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So did you want to tell us a little bit more about what you do at 76 Agency? I also know you co-host a podcast called Sustainably Influenced, and I'd love to learn a lot more about that.
Yeah, so at 76 Agency, I'm the founder, and we are a diversity-focused influencer marketing agency. So we essentially pair brands and influencers together and work with influencers to be the best they can be in the space. And sometimes that isn't always easy when it's quite a difficult space to navigate. It's a bit of a wild, wild west. So we're there for the support. On the other side to that, I am also an influencer myself, and I guess that's why I have so much interest in the industry. So I talk a lot about entrepreneurship as well as sustainable fashion and eco-conscious solutions and tips and tricks now and again. And then with that, have my podcast, which is focused around sustainability and basically what the word means in different parts of the fashion industry, beauty, eco-conscious lifestyles in general, and just really pinpointing how we can be better at making the world a better place.
Okay, I love that. Those are like two, I think we have a lot of similarities there in terms of spending a lot of time focused on how we can make the industry more diverse, and also how we can incorporate sustainability into that as well. And I'm going to also introduce Josephine Phillips, which is the founder of tech startup Sojo app, which is the UK's first clothing alterations and repairs app. It's super exciting. Hi, Josephine.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's so good to meet you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. In terms of just giving a small background as well to sort of expand on that. Yeah, I have a fashion tech startup that is working to help make clothing alterations and repairs mainstream, which is really rooted in slowing down consumption and changing the way we have a relationship with clothing. So repair is a really sort of circular mindset, and it's all about keeping things in, circulation for longer and loving the clothes that you already have. And then the tailoring side as well, again, you have a lot more ownership over clothes if they're tailored to you. It really helps a sort of sizing barrier when it comes to like secondhand shopping, and essentially by making it incredibly accessible through making it really easy through our app, we really hope that more people will get on board with it. And it's worth saying on the sort of, you know, diversity or sustainability side of things, that I sort of got into sustainable fashion right at the beginning through my feminism and intersectional feminism when it came to sort of the supply chain around garment worker exploitation and things like that. So I think there's quite a strong narrative to be had there when we talk about fashion, the fashion industry in particular.
Yeah, definitely, of course. And we'll definitely dig into that deeper later on. Our third speaker today is Samarta Pattinson. Hi, Samarta, how are you?
I'm good, thank you for having me. I was just grinning from ear to ear listening to Charlotte and Josephine. Thanks for having me. So my name is Samarta Pattinson. I'm the CEO of Red Carpet Green Dress, and we're a women-led organisation that has been working in sustainability through dialogue and action for around 11 years. We were founded by Susie Amos Cameron when she was going to the Oscars with her husband, James Cameron, and they felt that using that platform and having a conversation about how clothing is made, who's making it, and its impact on people and planet was really, really a unique way to have the conversation. But since we were founded in 2009, we've grown to include brand collaborations, educational opportunities, thought leadership pieces. So we really believe that sustainability is not this moment, but it's an entire movement that kind of amplifies throughout the entire industry. So excited to be part of this conversation.
Oh, thank you for being here. And it must be so exciting, just the line of work you do, having such a close connection with the public figures of the world, making change that way.
It's interesting. It's exciting, but only I feel if we choose the right people, and only if we make sure that we're spotlighting the fact that this conversation should be led by people from all communities. And that's why this conversation is so exciting to me, because I feel that so many of the ambassadors are still predominantly white. And so what we've been working to do is make sure that we have brown and black voices leading the conversation from the red carpet to kind of fashion colleges as well. So it's exciting, but there's work to be done.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you. I'll introduce our fourth speaker, which is Ngoni, which is the founder of We Are Kin. So glad to have you here. How are you doing?
Thank you all so much for having me. So I run We Are Kin, which is an ethical and sustainable women's wear label, and we manufacture in East London. I grew up just like a luxury fashion lover, and it was so important for me when I decided to start my brand to do things a little bit differently and to really consider each step of the supply chain, because while I love fashion and it's so beautiful, it does have a very ugly side. So that was important for me. And then I'm also an influencer in the same kind of space. So, you know, fashion, lifestyle that is ethical, sustainable, and just kind of forward thinking.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So as you can see, everyone, we're in good hands. We have some very talented and ambitious, beautiful Black women in the room today. And we're going to talk about navigating the industry as Black women, the ups and downs, the change we want to make, the change we are making currently. So I think I'll start with a question. I did want to first ask Josephine a question. So I've been seeing that you've been getting a lot of great press with your new startup, and you've had a lot of opportunities to be included in very important discussions. And I'm always here rooting for you. And I just wanted to know, what are the pressures that come along with being so many different things that we traditionally wouldn't expect to be so successful? You're a young Black female fashion tech entrepreneur. It's a mouthful, and I would love to hear if you feel pressure or weight having that responsibility on your shoulders.
I think probably this is the first time I've actually ever been asked that, and actually you're asking it, like I feel like my eyes are watering. But I don't think I've been asked that, and I think it's not really spoken about as much. I read in an article a while ago, like a few weeks ago, how there's like this added pressure for female founders. They don't get the space to fail in the same way male founders do, because there are so few of us, or a few of us that are getting funding, or few of us that are in the limelight, that immediately the pressure is so much higher, because people want you to succeed so badly because you're immediately being put up on this sort of pedestal and you're being watched and you're being celebrated. And it's obviously an amazing thing. But that lack of space to do things wrong or to fail at the beginning, because I've come straight out of uni graduated last June and started Sojo. And I think usually stereotypically for a white male founder, he might just be doing his own thing, you know, seeing how it goes. It's his first startup. It might go a bit wrong. He might do another one. He might do another one. And the fourth time it wins out. And I think that from the beginning, there has been a spotlight. And I think I've had a lot of stress myself of just being like, God, I have to do this right. Not just for me, but given that so few checks get passed on to Black women from venture capitalists, I really want to do well and give them a return so that that cycle continues of them being like, wow, actually we should be investing in Black women who know exactly what's up and who are amazing. So I do definitely feel that pressure. But I would say that actually it has been a privilege to be spotlighted as well, because it is amazing to have your business platformed and even have yourself as a founder platform so early stage. So I think it's sort of two-sided, but there's definitely a pressure, and I just hope that I do okay and that it's all fine.
No, you're definitely an inspiration in that sense. Just, you know, hit the ground running and doing your thing is really great. And I know that you're also taking the opportunity to use your platform to speak about issues that you're passionate about, not just sustainability, but about diversity as well. So I know there's issues about the manufacture industry, for example, and exploiting of the female workers. And that's something that you like to speak about. So I want to know what your perspectives are in terms of that side of the industry.
Yeah, I think, as I sort of mentioned, like near the beginning, that was really my entry point into this whole movement. And like it didn't come from sort of a completely environmental or protect the animals or whatever standpoint. It really came from a connection to women and connection to women of color standpoint, and being like, how am I fueling these, you know, old white men to become rich when they are becoming rich off the back of the exploitation? And I'm just putting my money behind it. I'm literally like, I'm not spending money where my values are, and here I am like promoting women in the West and female power, and I'm completely naive to that happening. And that was a really big like reckoning point for me. And I think one thing that's really bad about fashion is the lack of transparency, but it's this disconnect between Western feminists, who I'm sure so many of the women who are shouting about International Women's Day are supporting fast fashion still. And I think that there really needs to be an understanding of the link. And I think that that's only really going to come from A, transparency, but B, allowing those workers to have a platform. And there are so many great initiatives, like even sort of Remake Our World or Clean Clothes campaign, where it's really great that those kind of things are being spotlighted and looked at. But ultimately, the transparency has to be pushed for, because that way people can make decisions off the back of facts. And I think that that's something that the fashion industry in particular really lacks. And I think it's because, you know, like the oil industry can be so bad because it's really ugly and it's awful, and we all know that it's bad, but I think fashion has a glossy exterior, and that really needs to be dismantled so that we can actually see the sort of the exploitation that's happening behind it and make decisions accordingly.
Oh wow, yeah. So yeah, speaking about fashion having this glamorous facade, I think Samarta, you might have something to add to that, because you work directly with, you know, the glamorization of fashion, and you're picking out these underlying issues and putting them at the forefront. Do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I do. I think, first of all, what Red Carpet Green Dress has always done is to try and make this a very engaging and intriguing conversation. When we started, when Susie was founded this campaign in 2009, the conversation about sustainability and design specifically was very, very dated in the perception of what was possible. So looking at it from a design lens, people always assumed that if there was a sustainable offering, that it would be frowsy, granola, hemp. And so we always tried to approach the conversation with, how can we engage people with this in an exciting way, and then kind of pull back the curtains and say, there are so many more meaningful conversations we need to be having. And with the red carpet at the Oscars, what we had was the opportunity to turn a question into a bigger conversation. For me, sustainability is always a series of questions and answers. It's not about a specific product, it's not about a specific material, it's about back and forth on how was this made, who made it, how can we improve that process, who are we including in this conversation, how can we include that process. It's ongoing, it's infinite, it's not a moment in time. And so with Red Carpet Green Dress at the Oscars, what are you wearing became a spotlight on artisans, it became a spotlight on slow fashion, it became a spotlight on natural dyes, but it also became a conversation about how are we including people in this conversation. I tried to kind of make this point a bit earlier, but one of my passions is making sure we shift the spotlight on the ambassadors and leaders of this dialogue, because global cultural sustainability is the most important thing. So when you have someone like a Lakeith Stanfield or a Naomi Harris or a Priyanka Bose or an Angela Bassett having these conversations, they're engaging the Black community too, and they're saying, you're part of this. Priyanka is able to say, you know, 80% of garment workers are women of color. As an Indian woman, she can talk to an Asian demographic about the exploitation that's happening in that space. Lakeith Stanfield is able to speak to kind of young Black culture who look up to him as this really up and coming aspirational talent and say, what you guys have always been doing with thrifting and wearing secondhand, that matters. We've been in this conversation. Or when we worked with Michael Badger, who worked with Vivienne Westwood to create a natural dye dress, we had Michael Badger enabling us to have a conversation about the contribution of the continent of Africa to shaping sustainable design solutions. So our work is not to glamorize sustainability, because the fashion industry has, as Josephine already said, a really beautiful aesthetic. And I think we love fashion because it's inspiring. I love fashion because I get excited. I love seeing what we're capable of making. But there are so many layers that go into making what we're making, and all of those conversations have to be respected. So that would be kind of my view on this idea of stripping back the curtains and having meaningful conversations. The other thing I did want to say on this subject is we're severely lacking in education, and I kind of do guest lecturing spots at fashion colleges from Central St. Martin's to London College of Fashion, Esmond in Paris. And what we always have is like a missing chapter in the conversation about sustainability. So they are taught about sustainable design processes and zero waste, and they are taught about natural dye movements, but they aren't given the history about where some of these things evolved from. They don't know that this has evolved in parts of Africa and parts of Asia. They don't know about designers from the continent of Africa who have inspired movements within sustainability. So there are all of these gaps in how people can access that information. And we just want to really connect those dots and make it more accessible and more digestible. And dare I say it, less condescending as well.
I think another thing is that there's a lot of really great conversations happening, but how are we tracking the impact and, you know, being able to tell whether or not it's a trend or if we're actually making measurable changes?
I love this question. Can I just say something quickly on that, because I love this question. We've been doing a lot of work right now on environmental and social KPIs, because I still feel that the conversation about sustainability in fashion still relies so heavily on environmental factors. We're talking about carbon, we're talking about water, we're talking about waste. There are literally hardly any KPIs linked to not just representation, because I'm not a fan of just diversity. That just says we're showing that the world is diverse. Representation is saying we're making sure that you recognize that there are spaces and conversations happening that need to be recognized, and they aren't necessarily in your rooms, they're in their rooms. But there are no social KPIs. So we're trying to develop that to where you're saying we have like a task force that's 70% all women and 10% of those are Black women. But what about a KPI that asks about the perception of exploitation? These are the kind of KPIs where we're really getting to understand how people feel in these spaces and not just what it looks like.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I wonder how that translates also to marketing and representation in that space. So Charlotte, I wanted to also forward that question on to you. How are you measuring impact in what you do with your agency, especially with the clients that you work with?
Yeah, well, first of all, Samarta, I think this is fascinating, and I would love to go offline and have this whole conversation again, because it's so interesting. But I would start by being fully transparent in the sense that my agency focuses heavily on diversity and inclusion, but not necessarily on sustainability. And sustainability is an individual topic that I choose to kind of spearhead with my team, but not necessarily through the agency. But it's quite interesting in the marketing world, because it is very difficult to showcase what is actually working and what isn't, because there's a lot of misunderstanding around the term sustainability. So when we talk about sustainability and we put influencers in front of an audience and we have campaigns, that everyone thinks that this word means something and means something amazing, and it means they're doing something good, but there's so many nuances that kind of fall under that word. and a lot of the times it means nothing. So a lot of influencers think that they're doing something good, and they will be showcasing a product that maybe might have a sustainable element to it, but not necessarily a great social impact, or it might not come from a great organization, and it's just maybe a greenwashing exercise. But because there's a misunderstanding of the word and what it means and how it is used, we can't really say that the industry is doing a good job at being sustainable or in educating around sustainability, because it's just not true, because the word is just thrown around. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done around what we are allowed to say and what we should be saying and what sustainability really means. And instead of using the word sustainable, for example, I don't, as an influencer, I will never do a post and say this is a sustainable product, because I always say on my podcast, I actually don't believe in the term sustainability, because it means so many different things to so many different people, and what I think is sustainable might not necessarily be, maybe what my co-host thinks is sustainable, they might be different, or they might both be sustainable but might have a different meaning to us. So I think it's really important that that is noted. And again, education, something we joke about in the podcast is that every episode we can always bring it back to education, but we need to understand the terms and what they mean, and again, the history and where things come from, and how sustainability affects everyone in different ways. And yeah, there's just a lot. So I don't think it's necessarily, if we think about the marketing world, sustainability is a thing. Representation within the sustainability scene is a thing. On the influencer side, we see lots of Black and brown influencers talking about sustainability. Whether or not that is sustainability and what we believe it to be, that's a different question.
I think sustainability it's essentially a concept, and it's left to interpretation. The same goes with, at Yard and Parish, luxury is one of those words that we challenge, and we want to redefine what luxury actually means. That's a conversation for another day, but the same can go with sustainability. There's so many different nuances, and that leads me to a very controversial question for Ngoni about earlier, I believe it was earlier this year, you designed a wonderful dress that was requested by an influencer, and then the design was then stolen and reproduced. And I really wanted to ask you about this. I hope you're comfortable talking about the experience, because there's just so many things wrong with that, or so many things to pick at. There's the issue of, basically canceling the sustainable efforts of your, independent, small local brand. There's the issue of plagiarizing from a young Black woman. There's so many things there. So Ngoni, did you want to let us know what that experience was like and how you overcame it?
It was a really difficult thing to go through. I really kind of think of my business as my baby, and so to have someone kind of duplicate your work and get almost like plaudits for that was really difficult. But I have to say that I felt the fashion community definitely stand behind me, and then with my brand's ethos kind of being so known, it just kind of, I think it opened up a conversation as well for some people about being ethical, and it ended up actually leading to quite a bit of business. People saying, hey, I want to put my money where my mouth is, and I know that you're trying to do this, 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 and this, and so I'd rather get this garment from you. And yeah, but you can tell I don't really want to talk about it, because it was just not fun. It was there were a lot of tears and a lot of panic phone calls to friends and to lawyers and all of that kind of thing. And it's not obviously greenwashing at all, but it's kind of the idea of like big businesses will take ideas from small businesses and then try to make them their own, in the same way that a lot of brands who are sustainable now are starting to almost have to challenge when these bigger brands are saying to their audience, oh, this is sustainable too, or this, that, and the other. And most recently, I think H&M did a collection with Peter that's meant to be down free and sustainable, but obviously it's plastic. So it's just like a whole thing with fashion where you always have to do your research before you put your money behind anything, because a lot of the time there's people either in the global south suffering for it, or just the supply chain of it is like a very big best. So yeah, it's difficult. And as someone who loves fashion, it just, yeah, it hurt a lot.
I can imagine. I'm sorry you had to go through that as well. And that I want to touch on how you mentioned the community being very supportive about that. And I know Charlotte has a podcast, and I wanted to ask you, Charlotte, how you bring community together to sort of, have these conversations, and do you find that you've had a great response from your podcast?
Yeah, the podcast has been really interesting because it kind of came out of nowhere. So my co-host and I, we basically created an event, and we did it really last minute. I think we put it together in like 2.5 weeks, and we just put it on the internet and just said, we're doing this event around sustainability. It's a panel talk with a few people answering questions. And we didn't really have time to market it because we were really busy, and it sold out within like a week. And we were like, we haven't even promoted it. And we realized it came from people Googling sustainability, not even from our Instagrams or us promoting it, but Googling questions around sustainability. And then the event popped up through Eventbrite, and people were like, oh, this looks good. Maybe it will answer some questions. So at the end of the event, it was a panel talk, and we had so many questions that we still, hands were still up, and we were like, oh God, we really need to finish this event now. So we just sat down afterwards, and we said, there's obviously a conversation here that needs to be had, and we've started something, and I don't think we really realized what we'd started. So that's where the podcast came from. It literally came from an oversubscribed event that we didn't really plan, but we personally had questions that we wanted answering. And then we started the podcast, and we've just had so many different people reach out to us to be part of it. We've had some amazing people on it. Josephine's been one of our amazing guests, one of my favorite episodes as well. But yeah, we've just met some incredible people, and I think that's what's really been exciting. We've met loads of people in the space that are doing sustainably deemed things at projects at so many different levels. It could be amazing apps like Sojo, where it's using craft and skill and really that kind of people side of sustainability, as well as reusing, repurposing. But then it could also be like technology, where it's been like chips inside of products so that you can see the full supply chain, and things that we've never even thought or imagined before. So I think what I love about the podcast is that we meet so many cool people that do things that I didn't even know existed, and then we can then disseminate their mission and their message to the random people that choose to listen to our podcast. Some of them are our friends, a lot of them are strangers that we've never met before, and they just stumble upon us, and we're just able to share really great messages and really great ideas that might not necessarily be out there. Some of them, are quite small and random people that don't have PR managers or aren't maybe social media savvy, and that their message wouldn't really be heard without being on a podcast like ours. So yeah, I think community's been great, but it's more us like jumping into the sustainability community or whatever that might mean, and really trying to like bring people out and connect people. And yeah, it's been fantastic, and I'm excited to see. We're on hiatus as of next month, and then we're going to go quite hard in 2022, and I'm quite excited to see who we're going to meet, because there's just so many cool people doing amazing things that you just don't even know. It's like, oh
yeah. So when you're doing the podcast, do you feel that you sort of represent, that you're forced to represent Black women, or you've been discovering a lot of people just like you with the same mentality? Really love to know about that.
We've actually been told by one of the big podcast people, houses or publications, whatever they're called, that there's a massive gap for women of colour, specifically Black women, but women of colour in the sustainability area in the podcasting world. Actually, women in general, then Black women, and then women of colour. There's a hierarchy in podcasting, but we kind of don't go into this being like, oh, obviously we're always Black every day, but we don't go into this being like we're talking about sustainability from a certain viewpoint, but I think it does help with the kind of people that we get on the podcast, because we reach out to really interesting people that we kind of have met through our networks or our friends or family connections that again might not necessarily have been heard in kind of the mainstream podcasting world. So I think that's cool. But then we're also meeting just so many different people. I think taking away our Blackness, we've met just so many different people from different communities, from different walks of life, from different age groups. Like we've got a massive like Gen Z audience. Like we're not Gen Z at all, which Josephine learned when we were on the podcast, and we thought you were like our age, and it turns out you're not. You're like a young superstar. And we find a lot of young women specifically listen to our podcast that we just didn't realize we were that demographic. So yeah, there's a lot that we see through the podcast, but community and kind of, yeah, I guess community is like a big part of it, because we're building on our community, and we get so many cool DMs and like messages from people from literally all over the world. And that's what's cool. But I think everyone should start a podcast, because I didn't realize, first of all, how easy it was to actually just start, and secondly, how you can connect with people in a way that social media doesn't connect you. So it's quite cool.
Okay, wow, yeah. So yeah, I have a question for everyone, and it's around the topic of race. And I wanted to ask, do you feel that as a Black woman in your respective industries, that you're being Black, being women of color, brings a fresh perspective, and how in your industries?
For me personally, being Southern African, like there's a certain kind of body shape that I think for a lot of people you think of when you think of Southern African women. And so it was so important for me with We Are Kin to start the label doing sizes 6 to size 26, just so that women felt included in fashion. Because while I have basically a normal fashion body, and that I can walk into any kind of store and come out with a dress, I've always been around women who had that struggle because clothes just weren't made for them, they weren't made to fit them. And so that in itself, just because of my background, made me, really want to be inclusive when it came to size, and also just the people that you would see actually wearing my brand. So I've used, my first few seasons, I used like my model friends. So one was white, one was mixed. And then I've had Asian models, I've had Black models, I've had, models who aren't straight size, and I hope to keep going with that with We Are Kin. Obviously working with a small budget can be difficult, but it was so important for me to see, or to help other women see themselves represented, because I don't know about you guys, but growing up in fashion, I inhaled a lot of magazines and media, but people never looked like me, and it wasn't of importance to me because everyone around me when I grew up looked like me. But coming to England and all of that, I now understand just how powerful it is to see yourself represented in, whatever form.
So true. Samarta, were you?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to jump in. I was just nodding rather vigorously because I couldn't agree more. Sorry, I was so caught in what she was saying because I could relate. I used to, when I was at university, and I didn't study fashion, I studied economics, finance and management because Ghanaian parents, but I basically immersed myself in fashion, and everything you said about kind of the aesthetic, the shape, that just wasn't there. It was my motivation for these women to feel seen, to feel clothed, to feel celebrated. We don't get that, and that's why we create it, and that's like a double-edged sword, because you're trailblazing, but it's a lot of work, and at the same time, you're being held up as like the bastion and reflection of all Black women, which is so patronizing because we aren't a monolith. We're so nuanced. So if I'm asked to give my perspective in a conversation, that's my perspective as a single one Black woman. That can't be held as the answer that they would get from all Black women. And I think that's part of our struggle too, to say, this is our perspective and it's a unique perspective, but there are so many other unique perspectives out there. But just to the question, I think the question was around feeling a spotlight or along those lines. I think for me and how it's guided what I try and do is I just always try and create spaces and kind of shake up the status quo with the activities that we're involved in. I mean, if we have our global design competition, and I know I'm leading this organization as a CEO and a Black woman who's in rare space. I mean, I think of like the Fortune 500 companies in the US, only 40 are led by women, 4 of them are Black women. Like we're in some seriously rare company. And so with that, I have to just use that lens and say, how can I create opportunities if we do a design competition? And I know that the winner of that competition is going to go on to get all of this experience, get mentorship, get support from brands ranging from Vivienne Westwood to Christopher John Rogers, who I'm in love with. Then we need to go not just to Central St. Martin's and LCF, but we need to go to community colleges. We need to go out into the community and let people know that this is an opportunity for you as well. So I just try with what we're doing to always just inject, where is there space to be made and where are there voices to be heard that aren't being pulled into this? And also from a red carpet perspective and personal perspective, when is it about us just influencing and financing and financially giving support to voices? There's an incredible Black woman in this space called Dominique Drakeford, who is being basically erased because she's been around for a long time. And we've seen this within the Black community as well. There's this kind of divide and conquer thing that's happening right now because of the spotlight on sustainability. So a lot of specifically dark-skinned Black women in sustainability feel like they're being completely pushed out of the conversation. But Dominique Drakeford set up a digital project called The Root, and it was a 6-part digital series about decolonizing the fashion industry. We were in a position to financially support that. So in some ways, it's about creating space. In other ways, I try and finance back or support the voices that need kind of the support. And in other ways, it's just like stepping out of the way and giving the microphone or platform to other women of color so that they can talk about the work that they're doing and they know much more about it than I do. So it's a combination of approaches that I try and take. And I'm not sure if that answered the question, but I hope it did.
Yeah, did you feel that you had the same voice before becoming CEO, or has that given you the platform?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm very fortunate. So I have a founder. So I have my own kind of initiatives and things that I've started up myself. Red Carpet Green Dress, the founder is Susie Amos Cameron. I'm in very rare company where I have a founder who basically completely has stepped aside. And I've been in situations where we walked into meetings with insanely powerful and influential organizations, and they've been looking over me to talk to Susie as if I don't even exist. And in those moments, I've had Susie specifically voice up and say, I don't know why you're looking at me. I don't know why you're talking to me. The person you need to be speaking to, the person who has all the information, the person who has all the ideas is Samarta. And I don't know why you think it's okay to ignore her presence in the room. So in a way, I've always had somebody that's seen me. And if I'm being 100% honest, I felt more seen with Red Carpet Green Dress kind of talent plucking me and bringing me over to do work in the US and LA, although I'm back and forth, than I did for however long I was in the UK fashion industry. So for me, I had a completely different experience of trying to exist in the UK fashion industry. I found it very cliquey, very insular, didn't give space. And so I kind of went where I felt love and attention. And I've got that in the US, although I still work with the UK. So I definitely got a different level of recognition when I became a CEO, because C-suite just comes with certain different types of, not deference, but people do think and see that you have reached a level where you can command an organization that's multinational. But I've always felt seen and heard within the organization. That hasn't always been in the case when I'm the only Black woman in the room. In those situations, I've had to make sure my voice is heard. And that's sometimes challenging because people aren't really always willing and open to hearing a perspective that challenges theirs or makes them uncomfortable. If you're throwing around phrases like we need to decolonize the fashion industry, a lot of white people in the room are not going to feel comfortable. So it's kind of getting comfortable with making people uncomfortable sometimes, just because we have to exist in our own comfort.
Wow, I love that. That's powerful. Yeah, so the rest of you haven't answered the original question yet as well, which was, how do you make an impact as a Black woman and bring your fresh perspective?
Do you want to jump into this? Okay. For me, something that we joke about at work is that I'm a very palatable Black woman. I'm mixed race, have light skin tone, have loose curls, I speak well, I'm, quite petite, I'm very palatable, but I'm also very problematic. So I kind of I had a conversation this week that I walked into knowing full well what the end result was going to be, but I get invited to a lot of things. I stir a lot of pots in the sense that if something's wrong, I will go and I will tell the people, the brands, the organizations, and I won't stop until the problem's fixed, but they don't know what they're going to get until after it's happened. So I think the way that I have my impact is through, I guess, kind of like being a spy, in the sense that I get invited to a lot of things, both as an influencer or as a founder. I see what's not working or what's not right, or I hear things that are being said. I can then go in and I can correct them. I can offer training. I can make sure people are brought up to speed with the kind of language they should be using, or whatever it might be. And that's my impact. I also really am a massive advocate for diversifying the industry. So the advertising industry is known for being very white and very male and very middle class. I'm none of those things. So I started an agency. There are very, very few people when I started my agency that looked like me, or came from my background. And I do the absolute most to employ people, be that internships, work experience, or through just general employment from my agency, to ensure that there are young Black women who are trained up to being like really solid marketers, really good at what they do. So when they do kind of grow out of the role and choose to move on to a different job, they're going into an industry that might not necessarily be set up for them, but they're set up to be in that industry.
That's a really powerful position to be in, actually, because you can offer insight and make changes in these organizations, from the inside out. And I think that is something that a lot of companies are now looking for, may not know where to find it, but they are realizing that there's a lot of things that they've been doing wrong in terms of communications, very insensitive, even when it's not intentional. So it's great to have an agency like yours where you can, prevent these PR mistakes from happening. And Josephine, did you have something to add about?
Yeah, I mean, I completely, somewhat actually related to what Charlotte was saying, especially from like an experience I had this week with going to like an event, and there was a whole load of problems there. And I think by existing as someone who's different, you can't help but bring a fresh perspective. I attended this event, and it was me. I mean, the whole event of 500 people was unbelievably undiverse, but I was put on a table with 12 white men who were all between 45 and 60. And also, I'm going to tell the story because this is about race anyway, and we'll all laugh about it, even though it's so bad. But as I was coming in, someone was like, "Oh my God, are you the new 007?" I was like, no. And then he was like, "God, well, you two are identical." I was like, are we? Anyway, moving on, had this event, blah, blah, blah. The point being is that you can't help but bring a fresh perspective. The email that I am now, trying to write to talk to this organization is ultimately going to change, hopefully, the way they do things, in the sense of the words, again, like you said about the language, the words I'll be using around sort of like, it is violence to put someone in that situation and allow them to sit for 4 hours and be on the receiving end of repeated microaggressions and racist remarks, and the fact that these people haven't come across Black people, so they want to talk only about race. And the email that will be sent around with a very intense language will, hopefully shake them to some sort of core, and be able to change things for the next year, or change things for how it's done. And equally sort of saying this, I'm not doing this publicly, change it, otherwise it will be public, and all that kind of thing. And I think that fresh perspective is very important. No, if I had been a white guy who sat at that table, that perspective would not have translated, and there would be no changes and everything. So I think even just being invited into this space and existing as someone who is different allows you to change some of the status quo, essentially.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Yeah.
That's shocking. It's not shocking. Sorry, it's shocking, but it's so disgusting that it's not shocking. Do you see what I'm saying? You shouldn't have to go through that. And I love that you use the word violence, because that is what it is. And until somebody has experienced that, they have no idea what that feels like. It's constant dual existence. And that in itself is tiring. You must have been exhausted when you got to the end of that experience, 4 hours.
And you're trapped. Yeah. And it's like, and also what's really difficult as well in existing in that space, or in a space that's very white, is that also there's this sort of dual thing of wanting to say your mind in that moment, or wanting to be ready to go off, to be honest, and being someone who is a strong Black woman, but not wanting to be the angry Black woman, and also being aware that you're going to be on this table with these 12 people who share the same opinion. How am I meant to exist in that way? How am I meant to represent myself and my opinions in that circumstance when we're about to be here for 4 hours in a sort of 4-course meal and a whole award ceremony and this whole thing? So it's really difficult to actually just exist sometimes in the way that you want to be your full self, and you totally can't, because it would not be received well, and you would be living up to everything that they want you to be. And even sort of the conversations around being like, how am I even allowed to refer to you? Am I even allowed to say black anymore? And this whole PC culture, blah, blah, blah. It's literally like, what am I meant to do here? Like, it's so bad sometimes in business, in the business, like, not talking about sustainability, just talking about business, or startups and things like that. It can just be incredibly problematic as well.
It's so crazy that I don't think there's enough recognition given for the fact that when you are visibly black, you don't just get to wear a founder hat. You have the founder hat, you have the woman hat, you have like the black hat, or whatever your ethnicity might be. And I think you all saw my jaw. I was just like, wow. But again, like Samarta said, it's not shocking. It's shocking, but it's not shocking, because but I will say though that I have seen quite a few friends challenge quite a few brands when these things happen, and then it does change. So if some businesses are open to learning, it's not for us to teach them, but we have to, because they're clearly not doing their own learning. Hey Charlotte,
Yeah, someone has to.
You can step in. But I think change can happen. I hope that it does come from this. And I'm sorry, I'm sure you've been hearing I'm sorry a lot from all of your friends and all of your peers about this, because we've all been in that room and had that experience. And I'll stop talking, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But actually, one thing I really, really quickly will say as well, because I think that there's definitely something that is put on white men, which is rightfully so. But actually, I spoke to an older white woman at the sort of nearer end of the evening, and she was saying, oh, this event is so undiverse. And so I felt safe enough to tell her the story of the guy at the beginning, saying that I looked like 007 or whatever. And then her reaction was, well, you do look a bit like her. And I was just like, so yes, there is.
You don't. I literally just had to Google who she is, so I just was like on the same wavelength as everyone.
I know,
like, you've got short hair.
Exactly. So it's really about so the conversation definitely needs to be about white men, but actually white women, it goes down, like you said, Charlotte, in terms of like the woman, then the woman of color, then the black woman, and there are different levels to each of the things, and you can't just think any of them is one. It's a whole system, and it's a whole thing.
Yeah, I love that. You're all trailblazers in your own way, and it's important to have these conversations where we can relate to each other and also shed light on that, so more people can understand these nuances and these things that do make us uncomfortable, and that's the only way that we'll be able to make change. So today's session is actually, it's geared towards young entrepreneurs or those thinking about entrepreneurship. So I wanted to close with one question. Each of you, I would like you to offer one tip that you would offer a young Black professional that's considering starting a business in sustainability.
Besides, don't do it. Just start a business in general, not about just in general. It's a lot of work. I would definitely say write down what is like so key and so important to you. For me, with We Are Kin, I always say people and planet before profit. I've said that from the beginning. I will say it till the day I die. My customers will challenge me if I would ever step away from that. So I think when you start a business with a value, I think you really need to write it down and cement as your foundation and build from that, so you can't stray away. And you'll always make decisions based around that, which will kind of inform your business as it grows.
That's brilliant. Purpose-led. For me, speaking to a Black entrepreneur startup, I would say bring who you are into every single room, every conversation. I didn't realize that being a British-born Ghanaian, the things I've witnessed around my family, the tailoring, the natural dyes, going to Kumasi and seeing the Adinkra symbols, which talk about sustainability, literally communicate that. I didn't know that as I was growing up, it was being embedded all around me, reusing the Tupperware, going to the secondhand, mixing, like mending, darning, having conversations with artisans and seamstresses in Accra or wherever it was. So I wanted to say, just always bring who you are, always try and connect yourself to who you've always been. Look at your family, look at your upbringing. It all has relevance, because you have to have this really strong sense of who you are and where you come from and how you've always been part of sustainability. Some of the trailblazers of sustainability are Africans. Wangari Maathai is one of my absolute all-time favorites. So just bring who you are into every single room, because you're supposed to be there and you're supposed to be making rooms for other people to come into as well. So you have to be brave and fearless.
Powerful. Charlotte?
I would say not even just for sustainability, but for any business, for any Black person, is to ensure that you have a support network. And that could be friends and family, but that could also be in the form of mentorship. So there are lots of different platforms that you can apply for mentorship kind of help. Some of them are paid. I would urge everyone to look for the free ones. I work in the advertising industry, so my mentor came through MIFA, which is Media for All. But I would highly recommend making sure that you have people, not just one person, but people that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can use as kind of a connector, that you can just have kind of in your corner, because it is very lonely being a solo founder specifically. And it can be really hard if it's just you and your kind of ideas when you haven't done this before. So yeah, mentorship is my big tip.
Thank you. And
I'll do mine really quickly because I know we're on time. But I just want to say, I would actually say the opposite of just 100% do it. There's not been a better time for sustainability, and there's not been a better time for being a Black founder. So both of them, I mean, it's not like it's the best time that it's hopefully ever going to be, but there's like now is better than it's ever been. And there are incredible Black investors out there and incredible sort of sustainability champions and even funds that are only investing in circular businesses. So now is such a great time to get started. You're at the precipice of the market going like this, hopefully, when it comes to Black founders and sustainability. So definitely do it. Sort of, hopefully they'll be waiting for you with open arms. That's it.
This has been so powerful, ladies. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in to Sustainability Oh So White.
Oh, I just wanted to say, whilst you're all there, first of all, Sammy, huge thanks to you for leading such a rich conversation. Samarta, Ngoni, Josephine, Charlotte, I mean, you're really absolutely inspiring entrepreneurs. Just hearing your stories, what you've done, what you've achieved, really, really remarkable. Just an outstanding conversation, challenging one, but a really encouraging one. Just picking up on that point, and before we all let you go, because they're busy, they're very, very busy entrepreneurs. They've probably got calls, you know, some of them flying off to LA. There's all, you know, there's so much sustainably calling LA or what have you on the phone. But I just want to say a huge thanks. And one of the things that really struck me from that conversation as we head toward the end of today, one of the things that we can say from on the Life and Business Coach partner to the Business and IP Centre, the stats of the people who come through who are women and who are non-white, Black, Asian, minority ethnic is notable, and they're working hard on that, and that's great to see. I think you're right. I love the way that you summed it up, Josephine. It's not the ideal time, but there's never been a better time, but it's not quite the ideal time yet, and we're all part of that particular solution. I hope you found today useful. Thank you so much for being here and for just sharing so much of your wisdom, your insights, and so on. It's been absolutely fantastic.